Hey guys, Andy here. So this Christmas, my aunt sprung the news on me and brother that she would like a new phone for Christmas. She asked us because I guess we got her last and her first smartphone, which was the Motorola Moto G, the original Moto G. She's still been using it up to about 2 weeks ago where it finally gave up and I don't think it would turn on now, unfortunately. But she loved that phone. She's not particularly into tech, but she did like using the phone, the different features that it gave her. Now, obviously, you remember the Moto G was quite a small phone. Things have moved on a little bit since then. And actually, I realised this could be quite tricky. So the device needs to be kind of 100 to 150 pounds because there's three of us are going to go in to buy this. And it needs to be quite small because I know anything too big is going to be like snubbed basically. I can't imagine she would like a big phone like most phones are these days, because one of my first thoughts was the Mi A3. I've still got one in the cupboard, and then when I got it back out again, I realized, oh, this is quite a large phone, this probably won't do. So I headed off to GSM Arena and they've got a phone finder where you put in the different filters, and I quickly realised as well you can't put it in filtered by screen size because these days there's no bezels, and actually small phones can still have almost a 6-inch screen, so that didn't really work. So I had to go by literally dimensions, and I forget if I went something like 80 millimeters wide. Then you set the sort of rough price range, you set the minimum operating system. I think I went for like Android 8, and I think I set the minimum year to 2018, and it really narrowed down the options. And the one that sort of caught my eye was the Samsung Galaxy A20e. Which is what we have here. So we're going to take a bit of a look at that. So I got this one from Amazon. It's actually one of the sort of other sellers within Amazon called Mealy. They state in their description that they're an official Samsung refurb shop or dealer. And this one was £125. What I didn't realise, you don't get, it does say in the description, I just missed it, that you don't get the original box. You get one of their boxes and just a charging cable, and that's it. But I think that's fine. I mean, what more do you really need? My aunt's not going to need headphones and things like that. And I can probably find some more cables and chargers just because it's the first time she's had a USB Type-C, obviously, with it only being a second phone and all. So let's look at the design. And it is quite small. It's almost identical in size to my Pixel 4. If I put them on top of each other, they are basically the same size device. I think she's still going to think it's quite large, and I'll have to sort of explain to her this is kind of as small as you get these days. It does have the world's largest SIM tray, so I think you can have both 2 SIM cards and a micro SD card. It's the biggest SIM tray I've ever seen. Again, not sure how useful or necessary that will be in my case. The device is 141 grams and 8.4 millimeters thick. As you can see there, it's got a rear-mounted fingerprint sensor. We've got dual cameras, USB Type-C, as I've mentioned. We've got a 3.5mm headphone jack at the bottom. There is the huge SIM tray. On the other side, we have the volume rocker and the power button, and that's about it. It is a little bit of a fingerprint magnet. It is available in black, white, blue, and coral. I think that should be. It generally feels pretty good in the hand. The fingerprint sensor, it's not the quickest I've ever had, but it's reasonably reasonable. It's fairly low profile though, so there are a couple of times you reach around, you finally get there, and by that point nothing happens, so then you have to once you've got it sort of located, that's when you release and press again. And it's been pretty reliable. I don't think there have been any times really that it's failed me. I quite like as well in scanning your finger, it's one of the old sort of swipe down on rather than tap lots of times, which basically meant that it was just a lot quicker to register fingers. I don't know why more don't do that. I don't know if that's not as good a way of doing it, I'm not sure. But yes, the design, fairly sort of normal for Samsung, I would say. The hardware, it's got an Exynos 7884 chipset, which is 14 nanometer. It's got an octa-core CPU. It's got a Mali G71 MP2 GPU. It's got 3 gig of RAM, which is okay. Well, compared to the original Moto G, I suppose it's probably quite good. It scored 3,356 on Geekbench 4, which is a little low. It's not great, but again, we're paying £125 for this phone. Having said that, I'm sure there's some devices above it where you pay a similar price. So it's not a great powerhouse. Well, obviously not a great powerhouse, but even just the power to price isn't great, even for a cheap device. Having said that, I was playing Mario Kart Tour on it this morning and it was fine. There were a few little stutters in the game, but normally, interestingly enough, in between the races were nice and smooth, and it'd be when I was going through some of the menus and things were sliding in and out that you'd notice the stutter. It wasn't much of a stutter though, to be very fair. It wasn't really something you particularly noticed, and I don't think my art's going to be playing Mario Kart. It comes with 32 gig of storage. It's got NFC. That's quite good for a device this cheap, I would suggest. So you can do Samsung Pay, Google Pay, whatever else you want to do. The speakers are not great.
Mini for only £369. Now, if I want a portable drone, look at this now, fella.
So it's a little bit tinny. The volume isn't great. It scored wait for me, 85.4 decibels on my volume test, which is kind of mid to just below average. For a lot of people, that really doesn't matter. So that's entirely in your hands now. The screen is a 1560 by 720, so that's 19.5 by 9 ratio with roughly 296 pixels print density. It's a PLS TFT capacitive touchscreen. So it's 5.8 inches corner to corner, and it's got about an 80% screen to body ratio, and obviously, as you can see, the teardrop notch, which I don't mind too much teardrop notches. I'm okay with that. I think it's better than some of the big chunky ugly things like the Pixel 3 XL, for example. And on the whole, I think it generally does look quite good. Colours are quite strong and clear. It didn't score hugely well, so only 529 lumens on my test, which surprised me a little bit because it wasn't something that I'd noticed. I think as long as it's above kind of the 400 or 500s these days, you're generally okay with the screen. So yeah, not a bad screen, I would suggest, for the price. If we move on to the cameras, so the main lens is a 13 megapixel f1.9 28mm wide angle with autofocus. The stills from that were generally pretty good. They were good and clear and sharp. Sometimes I thought the colours looked a little bit off, like a little bit faded perhaps. But generally, I thought they were really good images for a £125 phone. Low light, I would say, is just average, which is fairly normal for a kind of a sort of budget device, really. That's normally what, obviously, lenses struggle the most in low light, but the main images look pretty good. The second lens is a 5 megapixel f2.2 12mm, so it's ultra wide angle. And I would say the wide angle generally looked as good as the main lens. I took a few different photos in a few different conditions, mainly I think quite good daylight, but again, the colours look quite strong and crisp, the images look nice and clear, generally pretty good. The front-facing camera is an 8 megapixel f2.0, and again, I would say the results were pretty good. Nice and clear, the strong colours, pretty crisp looking. It's got a portrait mode, obviously only using the one lens, it's going to be computational, but it generally looked pretty good. I took a couple of photos with the portrait mode, and they looked, I would say they looked okay. Then the video, we're going back to the main lenses now, is 1080p 30 frames per second, and it probably wouldn't be too bad but for the lack of image stabilisation, which, I don't know, it kind of just spoils it all, I suppose, really. Maybe I'm just kind of spoilt by cameras and video from expensive phones, but the image stabilisation just kind of just spoils everything on them, if you ask me. I mean, if you see what happens when I start to jog, it's horrific. And to be fair, that's literally me jogging and I'm swinging the phone about. So it's the toughest conditions, but I mean, yeah, it's not good. But the colours look okay. The front-facing camera is pretty good, I would say, as well. Video, it seemed a little more stable in some ways, but that's perhaps just how I'm able to hold it than the main. And obviously, Lowlight is, again, it's not going to be fantastic when you're paying only around £125. So I think generally, in the context of £125, I think the camera is reasonably good. So moving on to software, we're running One UI version 1.1, which is Android version 9. You will see, I think it's on here, there we go, Android security patch level 1st of July. So that's not great, we're into December, middle of December now, so that's kind of 5 months behind. Isn't fantastic, you will find better from other providers at this price point. But what I would say is One UI generally is a much nicer OS than it used to be. It generally looks quite pretty these days. I know Samsung used to get quite a bashing for their operating system, but these days I think they've just put some good effort into it and they've got some better designers on it. The gestures are all based off the buttons now, or where the buttons would be, they've kind of been flattened down. So you've got 3 pillars, I suppose, where the one side is the app switcher, the right side is the back, and the middle is home. And it takes a little bit of getting used to. A few times I've tried to swipe in from the side, and obviously it didn't work. The app drawer I still don't like is the old side to side. So you swipe up to get it, and you swipe in left to right. But that's probably a personal taste thing. And the good thing is obviously the launcher, because it's quite limited to apparently just sort of themes and widgets and grids. So we've got some home screen settings, but it's mainly changing the grid sizes. There's a few other bits that you can do, but nothing too exciting. But you can just install like Nova Launcher or whatever your launcher of preference is. And it's kind of not a bad software setup then. The battery is 3000 mAh LiPo battery. It does have 15 watts fast charging. 15 watts isn't massive, but it's okay, it's reasonable. It scored 90.5% in my test. So I play a video for it's about 37-minute long video, and then it's reload Twitter for 23 minutes until we get to an hour. And I gave it a half because literally it dropped from 91 to 90 about 10 or 15 seconds to go in the test. So I go, okay, I'll go 90.5, which is okay, it's not bad. For a 3000 mAh battery on a 720p screen, I was thinking it might score a little bit higher, maybe a 92, somewhere around there, but 90.5 is not, it's not a travesty. It's got quite good screen off downtime because I've not used it a huge amount, to be fair, and it's lasted like almost 40 hours at one point, but I think my screen on time was almost nothing at that point. So the battery is not too bad. So I think all in all, Samsung UI is not what it used to be. One UI now actually is quite good. I'm not sure I'd call it a strength, but it's definitely not the drawback it used to be. I think it's better than things like Xiaomi do. So don't be so worried like you used to. If you've not used a Samsung for a few years, have more of an open mind, I guess I would say. The performance is fine, even though it's quite low spec and doesn't score that well in benchmarking. You don't really notice it in day-to-day use. Again, Samsung have managed to optimize quite well, I think. And like I said, I'm able to play Mario Kart without really any problems. So that's okay. The camera is adequate. I think for the price you're paying, it's kind of what you would expect. And in most cases, the photos they're pretty good actually. It's mainly the video that lets it down, I would suggest. So all in all, I think for £125, and I do find myself saying this more and more often, and I don't know, maybe I'm becoming too accepting of flaws, I'm not sure, but for £125, I think it's a pretty good phone. I think my aunt's will be very pleased with it. It should suit all of her needs, hopefully. Personally, for me, the speakers aren't quite good enough, and the image stabilisation is a bit off-putting, or lack of image stabilisation. But again, it's £125. I think you kind of accept that for that sort of price. So I'd love to know what you think. Please do leave comments down below. I will read all of them. If you haven't subscribed already, I'm sure you already do, but make sure please that you subscribe. Check out any other videos in my channel as well, because hopefully if you've enjoyed this, you'll enjoy them. But for now, my name's Andy, and I'll catch you all again soon.